get started, again, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today. My name is Sean Warren, and I work on the curriculum management team at Kuali. And I have the light lifting to do today. The heavy lifting is going to be handled by my colleague and friend, Jodi McKeeman from the University of Washington. And so let me go ahead and start by introducing a little bit about Jodi. So as both business analyst and project manager for the UW Curriculum Management Project at the University of Washington, Jodi McKeeman is responsible for identifying the problems with today's curriculum management processes, eliciting the specific needs of campus and curriculum administration users, identifying means and tools to address those needs, as well as delivering a solution in a reasonable, efficient, and effective manner. Jodi has been with the University of Washington Curriculum Management Project with the student program at UW-IT for 2.5 years and was with the Accessible Technology Unit as a program manager for 2.5 years prior to that. In a former life, Jodi worked in international development as a program manager for a tourism business consultancy in Africa. And with that, I'll turn control over to Jodi.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, everyone. I'm Jodi, and as Sean said, I'm business analyst and project manager of UW Curriculum Management Project here at UW-IT. Last year, I was the business analyst when we underwent this sizable analysis effort that I'm going to speak about today. It was only as of November that I became the project manager as well. So as brief introduction, over the next calendar year here at the University of Washington, we plan to digitize the curriculum approval process across our 3 campuses, our 22 colleges and schools, and our 338 departments. So we recognize this move from an inefficient paper-based process to a streamlined digital process is going to be a culture shift, but it's a change that faculty and staff have been calling for some time now, especially with so many of the other systems and tools that they're using that they've made that digital shift years ago already. So today's presentation is really about how the UW-CM team is partnering with faculty and staff to embrace change and to address their struggles by designing, implementing, and supporting an efficient, transparent curriculum review process. So today I'm happy to share with you some of the lessons learned from our analysis and implementation efforts in hopes that you'll walk away with some practical examples of how to elicit user expectations and requirements, as well as some ideas about effective communication and training. So just some general information about our university to give you a sense of size and complexity. The main point here on this slide being, we have 154 years serving the community, and our curriculum records date back nearly that far as well. We have 54,000 undergrad and grad students, and then 3 campuses. That's another significant piece related to our curriculum management in Bothell, Seattle, and Tacoma. Specific to UW Curriculum Management, some numbers there. We have 30,000 users loaded into our instance of curriculum management, but about 5,000 of those are potential CM users, faculty and staff. We have 69,000 course versions, like I said, going back to, I think it's 1896. 18,000 of those versions are active course versions. We have 440 degree options and 280 programs. Luckily, we have one standard core review process for courses. Not to say every department and college has variations to how they implement this, but officially, we have these sort of 6 nodes for workflow. So that has been one, lucky part of our stats, I guess you will. So some of our main frustrations that we hear on campus when we talk to users, people are frustrated with the Word doc forms. They're just too prone to user error, they're cumbersome. Not only the people creating the proposals have problems with it, but up the chain, you know, when the curriculum office is reviewing these proposals, it's so often that they're finding user entry error simply due to the fact that it was a Word doc. Paper shuffling is a huge frustration, and also all the offline sort of support materials or documentation that goes along with these proposals. So they're having to print out the accompanying emails that go along with the proposal. Black holes of the review process. A lot of times we hear, you know, once I sign it and send it off, I have no idea where it's going next, or I don't pay attention anymore. It's been sitting somewhere. I have no idea where, those sorts of things. And then finding overlap potential is a challenging process. It's especially with our 3 campuses. The University Curriculum Committee really wants the departments to do their due diligence to first find out if there's any other courses that may offer similar content before proposing new ones. And it's a pretty cumbersome search process right now to have to go to the catalog, know which college, know which department you're potentially affecting, and then, you know, do a keyword search on a bunch of HTML pages. So that's another big frustration that folks have. So our challenge is, like I said, curriculum planners are frustrated with the paper-heavy process and the disparate communications. So what we need to do, we're charged with finding a solution that is going to work for campus, and also identifying what is campus ready for the solution and what do they need to be ready for it. So our approach to addressing these questions, first of all, we invested a lot of time in analysis and design last year to determine if campus was ready for a tool and to figure out exactly what they needed from a course management tool. Then we also piloted our solutions. So we did 2 pilot efforts in June and September of last year to test out and evaluate the product. And we also did a pilot run of the training program in October. And now we're working very closely with the Office of the Registrar, the owner of curriculum management, to roll out the tool in phases. So I want to talk a little bit about our team. When we underwent these pilot exercises and did the majority of the analysis effort last year, we had a larger formal analysis and design team comprised of folks from campus, Office of Registrar, and IT. We had subject matter experts from Office of Registrar and campus, a learning manager that came to us from the Office of the Registrar that was working with us, myself as the business analyst, and we had UX designers formerly on our team, as well as student assistants helping. It was earlier this year, now that we have a really clear picture of campus requirements, that we've been able to scale back on our dedicated team, but we still do have the ability to call on any of these resources, such as the UX designers and accessibility specialists for consultation. So I just wanted to point this out. This is evidence to the fact that we have dedicated significant resources to this effort, and it was really critical for us to have these resources to accomplish this level of rigorous analysis and preparation for our tool. Just a little play on the plan, do, check, act model. This is how we geared up for each pilot run and how we gear up for each release now. So, you know, starting up there in the left-hand corner, in the plan section, we set our goals for the next pilot run, and try to determine what features it is that we want to test out. And then we're communicating and recruiting for participants in the pilot run. After we have a good, clear picture there, we can start with those requirements and build towards or configure our system towards those pilot goals. Then we can go out and run our interviews, run our observations, do our pilot tests or usability tests, whatever they may be. And then, you know, we come back and summarize, review our results, design and plan for the next round. specific to the pilot process, we go through a checklist of activities to gear up for a pilot. So first, like I said, we need to set our goal and our scope, what we're going to be testing for each round of the pilot and what we're not testing, to be really clear on that. It's too easy to go out of bounds in these sessions, so we clearly define what it is we're going to test. Then we communicate our effort and what we're doing, including we recruit for participants, like I said, and we present ourselves as a collaborative effort between UW-IT and the Office of the Registrar, the Curriculum Office. Again, they're the owners of this, so they're usually the ones out in front doing that initial round of recruiting, and also sending out newsletters to the larger campus and to let them know where we're at with the project. We confirm our participants. So when we're recruiting, we're asking for folks that have real proposals that map up and align to whatever features we're testing for our pilot. So we're reviewing their applications, making sure they fit within the scope of what we're trying to accomplish. And if they're a good match, then we'll confirm our participants. And then we schedule those pilot sessions. And that's always a larger undertaking than we realize. Definitely a learned lesson of the pilots is to plan enough time for scheduling and trying to fit everyone in. Because with the review process especially, as you know, things need to happen in a certain order. So it can become kind of a logistical challenge to get everything nailed down. Oops. And then what I'm going to talk about a little bit more here is what we do when we're conducting the pilot sessions and how we document and review those outcomes. So here I have a sample agenda for our pilot sessions and a snapshot of the numbers of pilot sessions. So like I said, we ran 2 pilot runs of the tool last year. Between those 2, these are the numbers. You'll note that the number of departments, we just had 9 there, is small compared to the number of departments at the UW, and seems like a lot of sessions, perhaps more than 37 sessions for just 13 proposals. But when the proposals go through 6 nodes of approval, you know, with 2 administrators, one at the college and one at the department level that are there to usher the proposals, plus proposers and their collaborators, you can see how easy it would be to get to those kinds of numbers. So on the agenda side, what we do consistently with each of these sessions is we go in and we give an introduction, why we're here, status of the project, intention for what we're trying to accomplish today. Then we run through a usability test. So we give them a script basically with their task. And these are their proposals that they're working with. So the content of the material is familiar to them, but it's the action of entering them into the tool that's new. So or approving them in this case, that's new to them. So we will just tell them, here's what you're trying to accomplish, and we're going to sit back and watch, and we observe. And we ask them to talk us through the process, what they're seeing, what they expect to see when they click on something, where they're encountering problems, and we take diligent notes, or we record the session if not enough people could attend to help with note-taking. We run them through this usability test, and then we do a follow-up interview at the end. So some sample questions that these are critical to understanding whether the departments were ready to accept the new tool and to hear any concerns that they had about the culture shift, understand if they felt they needed any additional training where the tool was not intuitive enough, and to see if there were any features that they felt were not included that they needed, and to talk through some of those process changes really that were going to happen and answer those questions there. So After the pilot sessions, we, gathered all our feedback and summarized all of our results. And we organized our results by process, training notes, and usability tool-related notes. So this first set of outcomes that I want to share with you are related to the process of the pilot. And I included 3 quotes here on the left that each had their own sort of lesson to us that helped us refine our piloting process and helped reinforce for us, in some cases, that we were doing a good job. So in the first one, regarding the process, things went smoothly. I thought the time spent in training and going through the approval process was reasonable. So I included this one because initially we had some concern that we'd be taking up a lot of time from approvers, dean and committee level approvers, and we were a little bit worried about taking up their time in this pilot effort. But in the end, it served both as a training opportunity and a buy-in opportunity, an outreach effort that they all seemed quite pleased with, even at the higher levels. So that was good. We made sure to make useful time, make their time useful in this effort. In the second case, I included this quote: "Your time with us was well spent. I'm excited about the program, and the UW School of Dentistry would like to be the first to launch when you are ready." I included this because dentistry specifically, based on our first interview session with them, they didn't think the tool was going to satisfy their needs at all. And they felt like perhaps we wouldn't be able to help them out until we were on our last rounds of rollout and we had more features built up. But it wasn't until we put the tool in their hands via the pilot that they saw the value, and this is what they said at the end of it. So it was just a huge aha for us. It's really important to just put it in their hands and see what they think rather than explaining it. And then in the third case, the third quote, "Learning that you were more interested in seeing how I answered questions for myself than in teaching me to use the system. Once I got that, it was easier to settle in." So this was a reminder to me in this process that it's important to frame the pilot sessions correctly every time. You can imagine after the 45th session, that introductions are going to start getting shorter, and especially if it's the same person running these, which it was in our case. The first round of pilots, I was always sure to preface with statements about, this is a usability test, we're here to observe. And then, by the second pilot, I was getting a little more lax about that. And those introductions are still important. Each user is different, and each user is new to this. So that's why I included that here. All right. Then, on the right-hand side, these are, we've grouped our feedback into categories. And I'm going to take you through the reason behind these groupings in a second and what we found specifically in each case. So our first grouping was usability findings. And that's probably pretty straightforward, but it was, here's some samples here of some findings that we had. So, running issues when their browser, so if they had a dual screen example and they're trying to copy and paste between Word and application.
Excuse me for a second, Jodi. I'm sorry to interrupt. We're having that sort of digitized sound issue.
Okay. Let me just. How are we now?
Still happening.
I have not even moved.
Actually now it sounds great.
How's this? Okay. So I'll just back up to the beginning of this slide if I'm okay now.
Perfect. Yeah, you sound great. Thank you, Jodi.
Okay. So as I was saying, we grouped our feedback from these pilot sessions, and one of our groupings was usability issues. So just a couple examples here of what we mean by that. When browsers were small, the left navigation gets condensed, and so we just see these icons, and users then had a hard time knowing where to go and how to navigate. So that was something we noticed. Strange wrapping on some fields when, again, the browser's small and website is extending into the other columns. Formatting or validations missing. User doesn't want to have to type in all caps on a field, so we want the tool to automatically convert that. Or users want to be prompted to fill out the justification fields. When they fill out certain fields, so we could note these sorts of issues, and then put them into a backlog and prioritize them according to how many times we heard that particular issue. We also did a more, higher level fit gap based on the features that we were set out to test during the pilot run. So overall, how good of a fit were these features, and we could identify any that were a huge gap and that we needed to prioritize higher. And then this is the kind of most interesting section, I guess, is the Ahas, the features that we knew about or perhaps didn't know about at all. And as a result of the interviews and meeting with all of these folks, we're able to aggregate and figure out how high of a priority they were for our users. So we went into the pilots with some assumptions about priority of certain features, and some features, like I said, we hadn't even anticipated until we observed administrator processes and until we observed the committee meetings themselves. So I just want to run through all of these because they were all interesting. In the case of approve with revision, it wasn't until we sat in on a number of committee meetings that we understood this need clearly. They really needed the ability to send something back for changes without restarting the whole workflow. So they wanted to get it back to the author just to make a couple clarifying points, and they didn't want it to have to go back through the department chair or the college committee, in the case of the university making such a decision. So that was really critical for pretty much everyone that we met with. And then again, the committee meetings, they had specific needs, and they had their own administrator that we didn't realize was managing these meetings. And it wasn't until we sat with that administrator for several different meetings that we could understand their needs for an agenda builder. And that one-off emails to the committee chair were not going to fly. They're getting potentially tens, if not hundreds, of one-off emails, and they're only going to review them on a specific date. So there really was no need for these one-off emails. And the committee members are not in as approvers, so they're not getting these notifications. So again, we were able to identify the committee needs a lot better by observing and meeting with the administrators. In the case of bulk approve, we always knew there was a need for bulk approve for the college and university level reviewers, since they have, in some cases, hundreds of proposals to approve. But we were able to downgrade the priority after we were running the pilots, as we recognized we weren't going to be pushing large numbers of proposals through the new tool right away. So rather, while we're dual processing for initial rollout phases, this feature was able to come down a little bit behind some others that were more critical. So mostly just from a timing perspective. So then workflow visualization, pilot participants were very interested in obvious graphical detail. We knew about that black hole frustration mentioned earlier. So when we piloted the Kuali workflow, though saw some issues with it, our users were generally quite happy, so we were able to downgrade the identified gaps a bit. And the final case there, delegate signature authority, we had assumed that deans would want to maintain their practice today. They often assign their signature authority to their administrators, like via a rubber stamp. But when we were testing the new tool, we found they didn't mind clicking on approve button. So the ability to delegate that approval authority via the software became a much lower priority. In fact, it's pretty much fallen off our list of requirements. And again, you know, these were all directly because we piloted. We would not have been able to raise the priority or lower the priority or even describe the needs clearly without having run all of those sessions. Am I okay for voice? Sound and clarity? All right.
You sound great. You sound great, Jodi. Thank you.
Thanks. And then our last category was for around training. So while the pilot sessions were not totally representative of a true training pilot, because we were there one-on-one to answer questions and really were focused on testing how well the tool could stand alone on itself. But we still had a lot of informative information for training programs. The key finding being, you know, the tool alone is not going to be able to address the diversity of needs on campus. Even among our pilot participants, we had large, small, medium departments. We had experienced and inexperienced users. And so the tool couldn't, you know, address all of those different types of users. Just the, you know, descriptive text and no matter how intuitive your left nav and everything is, it's still depending on the user's adeptness at technology and stuff. You know, we're going to still need some supplemental training materials. So during the observations of the pilot sessions, we were really able to hone in on the needed areas of focus for training and communications. Primarily, the training is going to need to be around the process changes that will be necessary as a result of using a digital tool now. There's a lot of things that are easier or just plain different because you're in this online environment, digitized environment. So, you know, FAQs and addressing some of those common questions. How do I do things differently now that we're digital? Some of the secondary focus areas for training are the workarounds that are needed to do to address maybe a temporary gap in the tool. Identify where best practices could be communicated. You know, hey, in this department, they adapted to the single workflow and using the tool this way. You know, why don't you consider, you know, if your practices are similar, try this out. And like we said, audience-specific training needs. So the inexperienced user versus the experienced curriculum administrator, that they're going to have very different training needs. As I mentioned, besides piloting the product, we also piloted a group training session. And we had some key takeaways from that. We confirmed the campus is diverse, like I said, requiring different levels of support. We confirmed that the tool is fairly user-friendly, and so format of these trainings that worked pretty well was doing a short demo, but then alongside a practice and opportunity for folks that were practicing with the tool to ask questions of trainers and curriculum administrators that were in the room with them. It was really helpful for us to show the big picture of the approval process. A lot of people didn't really have a clear idea of how the workflow worked, and so pictorializing that and showing that on the screen, walking them through that was very useful. We confirmed that and to provide a slide deck similar to what we did in the training event, where they could then go back and train others in their department was reasonable, and they felt comfortable sort of in a train the train model, where then they would go back and be the advocate and the educator for this. And we confirmed that stat materials, quick guides, and so forth would be good for the faculty or the irregular users, that they weren't likely to come to a group training. Yeah, and then we also brought to light the issue of new curriculum coordinators, and we really started identifying how we would integrate the normal coordinator training that they go through when they join any department. We would integrate that general curriculum training with the tool training, and how we might do sort of an AM session for new people and a PM session for just the tool for the folks that already know about the general rules of curriculum. We created a bunch of training artifacts and piloted a few of those during our pilot sessions, so the quick guides. We had a presentation, a slide deck for the coordinators to present at their staff meetings that we demoed and tested out. We also have communication artifacts that we've created, so a newsletter that goes out to curriculum coordinators to keep them regularly updated on the development progress and rollout, and a website where they have all the resources and tools that they go to. Now to our rollout. So given the continuous development model of Kuali and the need to, for us to show progress on campus, we decided, we couldn't wait to have everything fully fleshed out before starting to roll out the tool. So this rollout plan was really based on our old curriculum management, and when we moved to Kuali, we delayed our course rollout a little bit. And we're getting to phase 1 of course rollout now, and so we updated our plan here to showcase that a phased rollout, starting small, seems to be more manageable than trying to get the product just right before mass release, and it works for us. So for this phase 1, we've configured and got a product going that has our minimum viable products or minimum required features. And in this first phase, the training method is very similar to what we did in the pilots: one-on-one, a lot of hand-holding, and our users for this first phase are a select few. So we're talking about fairly small numbers here. So very similar again to that pilot process. We determined the features that are required for our MVP, and we set our date that we need to have those accomplished and ready to go. We then select the departments that we're going to work with in this phase 1. First looking at people that participated with us in the pilots before. They're the friendly departments that understand what we're trying to accomplish with this first run. Probably the biggest determining factor in who we worked with in this first phase was their academic and curriculum planning calendars. So, we've only got one more university committee meeting before the summer. So working backwards from that date, we got to find out when the colleges are meeting and make sure we meet those deadlines. And then, again, like the pilots, we need to find proposals that are a good match for the product release. So identifying those departments that have things in their pipeline that are matching our release. So we prepared all our communications, draft training materials. The initial contact, the invitation to participate, comes from the Office of the Registrar. And then we have our one-on-one sessions, similar to the pilot, but it's in the production environment. Follow-up notes, thank yous, and newsletters. So as you can see, it's very similar. Phase 2 will be a much bigger phase. That's when we'll have 80% of our feature set ready. That's when we move to the group training. That's when we're targeting 80% of our users. And you'll notice it's not 100% yet, because there still are those 20% edge cases. Folks that do things a little bit differently, have a lot of interdisciplinary teachings and curriculum, and different curricular relationships across our campuses that are a little more challenging to get to or have extra features that they need. So I want to share the key learnings from our rollout effort, pilot and rollout effort, and hopefully give you some tips here that you can take back. Like I said, phased rollout works for us, and I would say that, start smaller if you can. About 10 to 20% of the course proposals we see on any given month's curriculum committee agenda are pretty basic, meaning, simple changes or straightforward new courses without any overlap issues. As such, we were able to prioritize the features needed to support those basic proposals and release to a small set of departments. So because of that hand-holding approach, we could tell them to use the new tool for certain types and use the paper form for other types. And we obviously communicated really closely with the curriculum committees to ensure they also were okay with the dual processing. So it allows us to show and report progress early. And so, that is a tip. Start smaller if you can, but it does take some analysis and a lot of communication to see if that's going to work. I would say our heavy analysis effort last year really has paid off. And if you can invest similar in that effort, do so. We had that dedicated team to understand campus needs and their acceptance criteria. And so come time to roll out, we were able to scale back on the resources dedicated to the project because we had such a clear understanding. Yeah, the next one, so departments and colleges, they invariably practice variations to a standard workflow. And so a lot of our piloting effort was about having those conversations, are there ways we can adapt the new tool to meet your needs? Are there things, are there limitations to how much help we can provide departments in accepting that culture change, avoid trying to configure or customize, I guess, this system for every single department, and see if there are ways really that you can try and streamline into a single or minimum number of workflows. Another key learning, the new tool is new ways of looking at the data. You have to move things around based on the technology. You have to group different things together than what maybe is on a paper form. And so people will be a little lost at first. And so I'd just say be ready to explain the change or note where people get hung up the most so that it's something to bring their attention to in a training or a quick guide. Exposure to the data often results in, ooh, that's not right, kind of reaction. So now that people get to see, where they fit in the org hierarchy for workflow purposes, you can expect a little bit of cleanup effort. So provide some easy access to the forms, the procedure for them to get that data correct. And then, process questions versus technical questions. Just a lot of people, have both. And so anticipate, those questions and put them into FAQs maybe, and then have a good support plan. If you have different people tending to technical issues versus curriculum questions, just have a good support plan in place. So with that, I'd like to take you through the first release of our curriculum management tool briefly and show you how we have addressed some of those main frustrations that folks have. Let me get back into full screen. So this is our first release of curriculum management. I am in a stage environment though. I don't want to mess anything up in production. And I'm logged in as a faculty user, so I'm a standard user, not an administrator. And I wanted to show you a change form. So then proposed changes in my course change, and I click on proposed changes. I've got this toggle now going too. So I wanted to show you our Word doc and show you how the new digital form greatly reduces the frustrations that folks were having. One most obvious thing, our Word doc has no way to nicely click on these little check boxes. Folks have to kind of put their X next to the box or get creative in how they fill that in. You know, in a digital system, that completely goes away. Check boxes become check boxes. Another example here, you know, we have some things real hidden. Check all applicable categories, areas of knowledge, and you've got all of their abbreviations here. And so often, when the change request was really just to add, you know, say the diversity area of knowledge, the justification would explain that, but users would still forget to check these boxes because they were so hidden. And so, you know, we're able to pull those out and expose those right here really obviously. The other thing is, because we're with this Word situation, administrator has to copy the catalog description and put it into our to an offline job to produce the catalog. And so as such, you know, because we print our prerequisites and our recommended preparation with the description, we were instructing users, it doesn't even say that here, we were instructing them to add their prerequisite detail directly into the description. And so, you know, with the digital system, we can separate those fields into 3 separate fields and, you know, build a job to concatenate them on the back end. So we're not relying on folks to have all these workarounds and copy and paste exercises. So I'm going to just make a really basic change here and leave edit mode. And I wanted to highlight here now how the system clearly highlights the changes, which really eliminates our need for this purpose of request section. Users don't have to say what their change is anymore and why they're submitting this. You know, just with this tool and seeing those changes highlighted makes it really obvious. And then I'm going to go ahead and submit and pray that I've got workflow set up, yep, in this instance correctly. So we submitted, and now we have, you know, no more black holes in the review process because we have our workflow visualized right up here. And users can scroll through, see where it's headed, and who needs to sign off on it for it to be finally approved. So if it's hung up somewhere, they can find out who it's hung up with. Maybe they find out the wrong person's in the system, and, you know, we have our system in place with our support plan to who they need to contact to unblock those proposals, you know, to get someone, the right person, slotted in. Or they can, you know, they see who it is, they can follow up directly. So with that, I am complete. If anybody has questions at this point, please let me know.
Well, thank you, Jodi. That was fantastic. You definitely covered a lot of ground and provided a lot of good insight into your processes and some great recommendations on for others to act on. So we do have a number of questions that have come in. and we have a few minutes left to address those. For those of you that are on the call, please continue to feel free to submit questions. Again, if we can't get to them in this webinar, we'll get to them after and send those answers via email. If you have a private question that you want someone to follow up with you directly, go ahead and submit it. Only I can see those, but just mark it as private, and we'll make sure one of our team members gets back with you. And again, the presentation has been recorded. The link will be shared with all attendees, and that link is also shareable, so you can send it to other colleagues that didn't have a chance to join. All right, so let's take a look at some of the questions we have. Let's see here. So you talked about, Jodi, you talked about implementing, getting feedback during your pilots, having requirements change a bit at times, or having new requirements. How are you implementing those new requirements in the system? Is that done via configuration? Are these customizations? How is that working for your implementation?
I assume specific to working with Kuali.
Correct.
Yeah. So as we find out new features, I mean, what's been nice is we were able to identify the core set of features that we must have for release 1, you know, via the pilots last year, and we found that what we've got through configuration of what Kuali has today, you know, that we could deliver on those requirements. As we identify ones that are going to be required and critical features for our next release, we prioritize them accordingly, and we talk through them with Kuali to identify, you know, are there other is this an outstanding request, and approximately when are they going to be worked and everything. And then we can come back and discuss, based on that information, is this truly a requirement? Are there other ways we can work with the system to deliver on it, or are there workarounds that we could come up with? So, you know, it becomes a back and forth, and, you know, sometimes there are ways to configure the system that we didn't think of or come up with to meet our needs, and so it becomes a back and forth, really, and even amongst us to really figure out, is this really a requirement, or is there another way we could accomplish this this goal for them? So for phase 1, you know, the system does deliver, and so now we've got a few months to try and configure the system and use what new things Kuali is coming out with constantly to address our needs. So we are continually evaluating what they put out and see how that addresses our backlog feature requests. Does that answer
Excellent,
it?
Jodi. That's a great answer. Yeah, thank you. And related to that is another question: is, you know, how configurable are the forms? You know, how constrained are you in terms of putting fields where you want them, having different types of fields to collect different types of data? What's your general feeling on the configurability of the forms?
The basics are all there. You know, you can put things in columns in whatever order you want. When you get into maybe slightly more complicated or complex constraints, so, you know, if 2 fields are filled out, then require this 3rd field, those sorts of validations are not in the current version of what Kuali is offering. But, you know, oftentimes those kinds of complex validations are things that, you know, we can live without, at least for a while. And we can put into the descriptive text, for example. We can tell people how to manage it. And that's even something we discover in our usability tests. You know, how critical is that validation messaging for our users, for our real users. You know, as admin and super users, we know what they all are, but in the front end, do they really need it? Most of the time, no. But yeah, for the most part, the basic stuff of a current form have been fine. And like I said, we've been able to release with the configuration as it is. The higher level validations are what's still lacking a little bit, but we report them and prioritize them just like any other feature.
Excellent. Thank you, Jodi. Couple of questions specific to your institution. What's the average count of proposals received in a semester at UW?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The average count of proposals received in a semester.
Oh, in a semester? Well, we're on quarters here, gosh, so the University Curriculum Committee, so the highest level of approval, who gets them all, reviews anywhere from 100 to 200 proposals a month, and they meet about 10 times a year. So you can calculate that.
Wow.
So they can, you know, get if you were to say 200, you know, a month in 6 months, you're going to have. Don't ask me to do my quick math. That was simple math, but I'm not going to try to do it.
So I mean, between 1,000 and 2,000 a year. That's a lot.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well that's good to know. Let's see. Someone is asking, can they see a copy of the layout of your UI?
Of the course form?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. There's another question about, are you willing to share examples of your training materials?
Certainly. Yeah. You know, like I said last year, some of the stuff that we piloted was on our older version, so the screenshots and everything will be different. But so we're right now creating the new ones that have the Kuali specific screenshots in them. But yeah, I'm sure that I imagine we would be open to sharing that, and it will be published too. So.
Very good. Cool. Question about your implementation. It says, what is the overall timeline to roll out to all faculty and all users over 3 campuses?
So I would say, you know, the 80%, that phase 2, we're trying to aim to have that done by the end of this calendar year. And that's assuming, you know, we're able to work with Kuali as we have so far to implement in that speed. It's pretty assertive, or I mean almost aggressive timeline. And I pretty sure that the 20%, those edge cases, will spill over into early half of 2016. But majority, including the 3 campuses, would be by the end of this calendar year is the goal.
Excellent, thank you. Another question, this is a little bit more generic, is how difficult is it to integrate with Kuali? What experience has UW had with doing the various integrations that you referenced in the presentation?
We have a pretty strong technical team, so I want to start by saying that. In a lot of cases, it went fairly well, and we were able to, we had the team in place to foresee challenges and to ask the right questions. We have run into some issues with our course data because, you know, we have historic data. We're trying to make Kuali curriculum management our source of record for courses, and so that means we need to have our entire history of course versions loaded. And so we recently ran into issues with the way Kuali managed versions. because all of our courses have, and all of our course versions have an end date. And so we prompted sort of a reboot of the way that Kuali is versioning things, and a reboot of their architecture. And so that was a hiccup, but again, we're working together and addressing those together. But otherwise, we've been using the APIs fairly easily and able to generate the data that are needed for the APIs. And we learned a few lessons, like that if we change something on the form and change the keys on the form, then our loaders and our integration efforts break, and so we have to stay in close communication with our developers that are doing the loading. If we make any configuration changes, we have to let them know and check in if there's going to be any effect on the integration jobs. So I'd say it's been a fair experience.
Excellent. Thank you, Jodi. I have a question here, and I might start by helping answer the question, then I'll turn it over to you. The question is, how many of your customizations were available through Kuali versus how many did your own IT department need to create? And I'll begin by saying just a couple of facts that Kuali Curriculum Management, as the way it's being used at UW, is a software as a service. So everything that you saw in the demo is something that was created by Kuali. Software as a service, there's no ability to actually customize the software directly. That process is done through a feature request process, and then we develop it at Kuali. That said, there's a lot of functionality that UW has to integrate and sync with their existing systems that did require development on their end of things, but not in the Kuali application. And Jodi can probably speak to that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so yeah, we have other systems and tools, namely our MyPlan system that uses curriculum management data. So we've had to build a lot of integration there. But we've also used the tool. One cool thing, we weren't anticipating to do anything with program or departments or our credentials straight away. But because Kuali had that already built in, we took advantage of it, and we kind of pivoted early this year to take advantage of that and start collecting some data about our departments, programs, and credentials for MyPlan's purposes. So we basically built out those forms and have been in production with those 3 forms since February. And one thing we've built out due to a limitation in the current Kuali instance is for our manager who manages those 3 entities, if you will, on the data collection effort for those 3 entities. They wanted to track where the proposals were in kind of aggregate format, and right now there's no real ability to search by where our proposals in workflow and see where they all are. So we have built an administrative tool on our side that taps into the workflow API, and we're able to kind of see what's been submitted and kind of get a picture view based on college and based on department where things are at. So again, I think we have a strong technical team that we can do those sorts of add-on features to augment what Kuali is offering already. But again, that wasn't anything we had to have. It's really just kind of making the administrator's job easier.
Excellent. Thank you, Jodi. Well, to respect your time and the time of others that have freed up their day to attend, we are at just past 11. One, Jodi, thank you so much. You were fantastic. I felt like I learned something, and I really appreciate it. So again, thanks from Kuali to everyone for attending. We really appreciate your time. And please join us in our next CM webinar.